And here we are on Friday night. It is Car Con Carne. I'm James Van Ostel, still here like I am every day and every night. It is Quarantine Con Carne. Sign up for the Car Con Carne email list. It's easy to do. It's on the front page of carconcarne.com. And in doing so, you will put yourself in the running for a $50 gift card to Byron's Hot Dogs, 2 locations on the north side of Chicago. Do that. Get yourself registered before New Year's Eve, please. And if you're into the whole podcast thing, which I imagine you are because you're either watching or listening right now, I also do another podcast for my corporate masters. I do the History of Alternative podcast on 101 WKQX on 101WKQX.com. You should check out our most recent episode. I co-hosted with John Manley, the night guy and all-around good dude at WKQX. We run through our picks for our favorite albums and songs for 2020. You may disagree with some, you may agree. In any event, I love lists. I'm sure you do too. Check that out. One final note, it's no secret. I have been loving throwing myself back into vinyl listening and collecting. I just bought this album. I haven't had this album for years. I bought this album, Susie and the Banshees Peep Show. I haven't listened to it in forever. I forgot how really freaking good it is. I was just listening to it before I started podcasting. I bring it up now because holy shit. What a great album. All right, that all aside, it is podcast time. My guest tonight is Ryan Trembath. He is the author of the recently released book, Signature Shoes, The Athletes Who Wore Them, and delightful pop culture nuggets. Ryan, happy Friday to you, although every day feels like Monday, Tuesday. It doesn't even feel like a Friday, does it?
No. How's it going, James?
It's great.
Yeah.
So
this is probably the latest I've had to hold a conversation with someone since the pandemic started, other than my wife, of course.
the latest, you mean at night?
Yeah, probably.
Well, I'm sorry to keep you up.
No, I know I'm up. I just just sit at my house.
So before we talk about your book, I'm looking. We're in your library or your private space here.
Yeah,
You've got stacks of VHS tapes behind you. I see Ghostbusters. I see Uncle Buck. I see The Godfather Part 2. Are those records right behind you?
yeah, and then I got some records right here, DVD collection, books. So kind of just this is my bookshelf in my basement, basically.
So are those records years old? Have you had them since you were young, or are you a new collector?
Had some of them since I was young. Had some of them for probably started buying records about 15 years ago, and it's weird. I always keep the price tags on them, so I look back and it's like, oh wow, I got the band's like second album for $4, in 2008, and then now it's probably you can sell it for like $20 or something at least.
It's becoming a problem, especially during the pandemic, where things just get delivered to your front door all the time.
Yeah.
I need to throttle back on this stuff. Anyways, the new book is out. Tell us first where we can get Signature Shoes, the book.
So you can grab it at eckhartzpress.com, ECKHARTZ press.com. It's shipping now. There's been a few problems with the postal service with the pandemic and the holidays and everything, but it'll make its way to your doorstep eventually.
That's right. Have faith. It'll show up eventually. That's what everyone's kind of living through right now. So let's talk Signature Shoes. Obviously, you wouldn't write a book like this if this wasn't a hobby for you, if this wasn't a passion for you. When did the hobby catch you, or how did you latch into the hobby?
So I've kind of just always been interested in, sneakers. I mentioned in the book when I was a little kid, I was kind of obsessed with shoes and just start like yelling shoes when I saw, someone with a nice pair of tennis shoes. And, always since then just kind of kept a keen eye on sneakers, and the pandemic hit and just started writing about it basically. Sorry, you dropped out for a second there.
Yeah, sorry, it's my first time on Zoom. So you started writing this book during the pandemic. This
Yeah,
wasn't
correct.
something long simmering. This is something you cranked out this year.
Yeah, I mean, it took me about 3 months to write, which doesn't sound like a long time, but I was working on it, 3 to 4 hours a night, every night. And I don't think I took a night off for 3 months, sometimes even working on it like an hour or two during the day. And
I think
so
that's the secret to becoming a published author, is just not quitting. It just
that's pretty much what I did. I mean, it actually started right when the pandemic started. I bought a typewriter.
a typewriter.
Yeah, so I was just kind of having some fun messing around on a typewriter, and I started writing just some letters to whoever, and I was writing a newsletter to some friends, and this would have been the second issue, and I got like 6 pages into it and just realized I had way too much material to send out, and also too much for a typewriter. I had to switch to a computer. So
Although I shouldn't be surprised by the typewriter just based on the VHS tapes
yeah,
sitting
I
behind
mean,
you.
you can get like 10 for $1 nowadays, so
Yeah,
it's worth it.
you are old school to the core. So I went into this book not knowing a whole lot about signature shoes, not having the same fire or passion. So this was a learning experience for me. I think the first thing that struck me was how old this practice or this signature shoe thing is. I mean, dating back to before World War II, really.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck Taylor is technically the first. He got his name added to the All Star in 1932. It wasn't designed for him, but his name is on it, so it's a signature shoe. And then, really, in the 60s and then in the 70s, it just took off.
Right. And one thing you do to keep people like me engaged throughout, because there are a lot of dates, there are a lot of stats throughout this book. I mean, it's very meticulously researched. To keep me on board, people like me, you throw in the pop culture nuggets. It's in the title of the book, for God's sakes. But like 1932, in addition to talking about signature shoes and uh, Chuck Taylor and all that, you're talking about Todd Browning's Freaks, which is an epic in the history of cinema.
Yeah, I thought, well, one thing, I always like, if I'm reading a book or something to like put you in context with what was happening historically, especially like you said, there's just so many dates being thrown around. You kind of get lost in the dates and you're like, oh, so what else was happening in the world, at this time? And I think it's just kind of nice to have something like that.
Yeah, it kind of grounds everything. So you talk about like All in the Family and The Godfather and the birth of ESPN, even Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
like that. It's a nice balance.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, Dark Side of the Moon it's everywhere now. Or it feels that way anyway. Like kids are picking up that record, and
It's funny you should say that. My daughter went shopping pre-pandemic with a bunch of her friends. They hit the mall, and she came home from one of the stores. You know, she was a tween at this point. Came home with a Dark Side of the Moon like tie-dye shirt. And I said,
nice,
"Do you know what that is?" No, but it looks cool.
exactly.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
Dark
whatever.
Side of the Moon, produced by
Well,
Ellen Parsons, for God's sakes. One thing I remember when I was young, and I'm a bit younger than you, Ryan. When I was young, Keds were a big deal. People wore Keds. You don't really see people in Keds in the present day, not really. Um,
yeah,
but I learned a lot about Keds. First of all, Africa Bambaataa was a
yeah,
Keds enthusiast back in the
exactly.
day.
I mean, and then so I threw in stuff like that, like threw him in there, Grandmaster Flash, and of course, Run DMC and Beastie Boys are in the book. But yeah, Bambaataa, he made the Supers famous. They came out in 1969, so he wore those pretty much everywhere.
Well, speaking of Run DMC, let's talk a little bit about Adidas. Again, didn't know the history. I'm sure it was out there. It was in front of me all along. But Adidas, really the first signature shoe, and the birth of Adidas really was concurrent with the rise of the Nazi Party. It was like one of the creators was a Nazi youth, right?
Yeah, they actually both brothers were. Both Adi and Rudolph were both members of the Nazi Party. And one of the guys who wrote a blurb for me, Jason Coles, is working on a documentary right now just on the two brothers and their longstanding feud. Which, I mean, if they hadn't, actually, if they had got along, we wouldn't have had both brands. We might not have had either one, really. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
You also make a case in the book for the new sneaker smell, as opposed to a new car smell, the new sneaker smell. I'm surprised there hasn't been a candle or some sort of like essential oil made with that scent.
Yeah, I feel it's weird. The new car smell is good. Don't get me wrong, but new sneaker smell. It almost, I think it smells better. I'm gonna just say that right there. And
It's the like the rubber and the it's the
yeah,
everything. And you pull back the paper and
exactly. Yeah,
it
they
is a
just.
one of a kind smell.
I know it's every time I open a new box of shoes, I got to take a smell almost instantly. So it's one of those things, and you can't enjoy it for too long either because once you start wearing it, it's gone.
Yeah, see you later.
So.
I'm still old school. I love my Chuck Taylors. I love my Jack Purcells. But I realize I'm in good company because people like George Harrison and Bruce Springsteen.
Uh, yeah, those two. Also, Cobain. He famously wore them. And it's amazing that kids are still wearing them. They produced them, it seems like, in just endless colors throughout the years. And I've never had a pair actually, which is kind of weird. But
I fell down the Converse rabbit hole early on in the pandemic, all kinds of coupons and specials, and I got a couple pairs of shoes sent to my house, and I realized I literally have nowhere to wear these to. I'm not going anywhere. I've got shoes; they're just in my closet now. I have a pair of Converse I've not worn since they arrived at my home.
all right, well,
Which,
that's kind of a sad thing, but you'll get out there eventually.
yeah, right. I mean, it's life under a pandemic for sure. You talk about Arthur Ashe. Also, the rise of Vans is covered, which
Yeah, I felt
if you
like that
think
was
about
important.
sneakers, yeah.
Even though they didn't come out with a signature shoe until 1989, I just love the story behind Vans, and Dogtown and Z Boys is one of my favorite documentaries, if not my favorite documentary. So in it, and I make the case in the book that Stacy Peralta and Tony Alva, they pretty much designed the second shoe that Vans came out with. So it could have easily been a signature shoe.
You are Chicago. Are you a Chicago native?
I am, yeah. In fact, I went to Columbia College. I think.
Oh, right on. I went there. I
Yeah,
graduated
yeah.
without taking a math course. Um, so as a Chicagoan, are these signature sneakers or are these signature gym shoes?
Well, signature sneakers, I mean, I think is just the correct terminology, just based on the culture. But I'm not gonna get mad if anyone calls them gym shoes or tennis shoes. So.
uh, Talking more about, I mentioned Africa Bambata. You mentioned Run DMC. Signature shoes swirling around the world of hip hop and rap. LL Cool J wore Air Jordan 1s on his radio album,
Yeah.
which I'm sure the two work together to blow each other up, so to speak.
Um.
I'm sure LL Cool J helped sell Jordans just by, I mean, because he was cooler than shit when that album came out.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm sure that was a conscious decision to wear them. I mean, and then they basically just blew up, and the Jordan just changed everything. I mean, and Easy E he wore the Air Jordan 3s on an album, so it really just took over.
You mentioned Rick Barry, and I swear to God, I'm embarrassed to say this, Ryan. My knowledge of Rick Barry is limited to back in maybe the late 70s, even no, it must have been late 70s. Comic books had a Spalding ad on the back cover, and it was Rick Barry with Dr. J. And it was like a mini comic book with the two, or mini comic strip with the two of them. That's my knowledge of Rick Barry, is from reading comic books as a kid.
Nice.
But I learned more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like everyone has a weird thing where they just know someone from something completely unrelated to whatever they did, basically, to make their way in this world.
So going past LL Cool J, ladies love Cool James, the 90s, the period of gluttony. This is when everything just went bananas, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we have the Air Jordan to thank, but Shaquille O'Neal in 1992 got a signature shoe before he even stepped on the court. And I remember like his basketball card, his rookie card, and the hype around that. And I don't know, I think they're probably worth like $1 now. But it was just crazy. Everyone, it seemed like, had a signature shoe. Dennis Rodman got one. His signature shoe actually just got re-released, and I'm kind of wondering if he even makes any money off that. But I kind of figure he probably doesn't, but who knows. And then I talked to a guy just the other day. He's like, "Oh, Larry Johnson, his shoe got re-released, so I just bought it because I had it when I was a kid." And Grandmama basically was his nickname.
So there's a collectability aspect to this, a huge collectability aspect to this. And this is, I think, what really interests me as someone who has collected comics and music his whole life. What makes the shoes valuable? Is it scarcity?
Yeah, pretty much just based on how rare they are. And so now when, say, like an Air Jordan comes out, it's released in, limited numbers in that color. And so collectors, well, really it's resellers will just jump on it because they know it's just going to go up in value, and they can sell it for a lot more than what they bought it for. But like I mentioned in the book, like the Wilson Bada John Wooden, there's edition. They made 620 pairs for each one of his wins at UCLA. So that's, that's pretty scarce, and it's, collectors are after that sort of thing.
So it seems like, and this is true with records, it seems like it's hard for fans to get a hold of these shoes without really camping out, doing extreme things, because it is those kind of resellers who find ways to get at this stuff before legitimate consumers.
Yeah, it's camping out. And now really with everything online, it's, bots, because they're, just everyone's, you can't get in basically. If you're just, by yourself on your computer, it's next to impossible. You got to have, multiple elements at work.
Gross.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I've seen people offering, instruction online on how to create bots and stuff like that. So it's ridiculous.
Ick. There are a lot of pictures in the book. Are those all from your own personal collection?
No, a handful, probably 6 of them are, but I reached out. A lot of the shoes are so rare. Like the picture of the Billie Jean King in there, they only made 300 pairs. The picture, that was an original Air Jordan in there, and I think the guy who had that sold it for like $10,000.
Oh my
So I mean, it's pretty crazy. Some of them, I mean, you really, they're pretty hard to find if they're still even around, if the polyurethane hasn't broken down by now.
And obviously they're more valuable if they've never been worn.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I mean, how many people buy shoes and don't wear them?
And you make the case at the end of your book, like, what's the point
What's
of
the
collecting
point?
records if you don't play them? What's the point of collecting shoes if you don't wear them?
Yeah, I mean, with records, I see everyone online saying like, "Oh, here's a good player copy." They're all really player copies to me. I mean, you want to keep them in, nice condition, take care of them and everything, but you know, use your stuff basically.
I feel the same way about comics. I want to thumb through the pages. I want to smell the paper
Yeah.
when I pick up that old Silver Age book. All right. So the book, again, it is out now. It is through Eckhartz Press, ECKHARTZ Press.com. It is Signature Shoes, the athletes who wore them, and delightful, and they are delightful, pop culture nuggets. We can get that book. I'm impressed with how quickly you turned that around. You've unfortunately done a terrible job of managing expectations for your future works.
All right.
And how quickly you did this. But really nice job. I learned a lot, and I thought it was a lot of fun to read.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. No, and that's the thing I wanted, I couldn't have made the whole book just, unless you're making a coffee table book. I wanted to, throw some stuff in there to kind of make it more fun.
I love it. Well, thank you for doing this, Ryan.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.